All right, thank you, those who are sticking around for the afternoon portion. I will ask, since you do have a panel, kind of come to the front. Come up to the front. They're not scary. They don't bite that hard. It'll be fine. Yeah, you got that. Come on up. All right, first, before we start with the panel, we're going to have Bethany Walecki give a short introduction into our program called PAYDER. And so, those of you that don't know what PAYDER is, Beth will give you a very much better explanation of it than I can. So,
well, like Mary said, thank you everyone for sticking around. We're excited to have this in addition to our annual meeting. And so I want to give a little bit of background as to why we are adding this to our meeting and why we're doing this. So in 2021, late 2020, early 2021, Green Crop Consulting launched a new program by the name of PAYDER. And some of you I know are familiar faces. We've chatted about this before, so I apologize. This is going to be a little bit redundant, but stick with me here. So the premise and the goal of PAYDER is really all about tying your agronomic and economic pieces of your operation together. So what we do is we kind of take all of that different data, and by data I'm talking all of your input costs, all of your variables, all of your yield data, all of your planting maps, all of those types of things, and we try to tie it together. And we try to offer what we call a yield efficiency score and profitability calculator to help you better understand what your dollar per acre return to land management really is. Like I said, yield efficiency is kind of the basis, it's the starting point and the ending point of everything we're doing through PAYDER. So we're wanting to identify this number by taking a look at and calculating all of your different variables. And then at the end, we return back to this number. But in the interim, we do a lot of different things. We start by creating management zones that are going to be more tailored to productivity. So we take your soil management zones into account. We also layer your historic yield data together and really try to fine-tune the productivity of your operation and utilize that when making planting maps, variable rate nitrogen maps, those types of things. We also help you by planning out what your financials are looking like for the next year. So we'll sit down and we'll take a look at, okay, what selling price do I really need to achieve kind of that break-even point? And what am I looking at in terms of investment in all of my different inputs? We also do, like I said, the variable rate prescriptions for nitrogen, for your planting population. Basically, if you have the ability to variable rate apply, we have the ability to not only write the prescription, but then also embed some different trials in it. And then at the end, like I said, we collect everything that's been done for the year financially, and we're going to put it all together, and we're going to identify your yield efficiency score. On-farm R&D is a big piece of that. I know it's been a hot topic today too. So we have a bunch of different trials that we can kind of set up that are tailored to essentially your risk adversity. So we can do high checks and low checks, which are just what they sound like. They're kind of blocks placed in your field that are written into the prescription. We can also do strip trials. And then we can do what we call enhanced learning blocks, which are random replicated trials that we drop in specific areas of your field that then allow you to test out a bunch of different things, maybe with controlling one variable. So maybe we take a really high performing area in your field. We want to test out what planting population is going to be not only agronomically your best winner, but also what is going to economically pay you back the way you need it to. Like I said, basically, if you have the ability to apply it in a variable rate fashion, we have the ability to write the prescription and embed some of these different trials in it. Also, through our yield efficiency analysis and calculation, we can break out and identify what is really helping your operation versus maybe what's holding you back a little bit. We can take a look at your seed and hybrid performance, maybe what fields are doing best with certain crops in it. What your fertilizer ROI is looking like. You know, in a year where it's struggling, does it actually make sense to maybe still push some of those more challenging areas? Your chemical performance, making sure that your chemical program is doing what it's supposed to from an ROI standpoint. And then also taking a look at your operations piece of that as well. We break things down to a management zone level analysis because we're really trying to get down to a sub-field level. We know that not every field is created equally, and we also know that not every part of each field is created equally, so it's just trying to take that next step and really fine-tune and treat those different pieces of the field the way that they need to be treated to be agronomically and economically the best that they can be. This is just an example that kind of shows you some of the discrepancies that we like to identify and that we can identify through this program, where you may have a field or you may have two fields that have yielded roughly the same, but your yield efficiency is dramatically different. So this serves as a starting point for a lot of what we're doing through Pater to kind of dig into that and identify, okay, why is that? Is it a seed hybrid thing? Is it that you fertilized this field this year and you didn't fertilize that one? Really just using that as a piece, a guide to break into it and then determine, okay, what trials do we need to do? What do we need to learn more about these fields to bring them up to the same yield efficiency? So how can Pater help me? That's a pretty common question that we get. And really, we've kind of identified that there are 4 different primary ways that we think Pater can help a grower like you. Number 1 is we're going to help you maximize profits. We want to, again, dig into what is holding you back and maybe look at how we can propel you forward. We want to use data to drive these insights, and we want to make sure that every decision we're making is sound. We're going to help you with your operation management. We're going to help things flow just a little bit better and have you leave with some deliverables that are going to help you look back on and refer back to and know that you made those sound decisions. And again, all of this circles back to, it starts and it ends with improving your yield efficiency. We want to make sure that that dollar per acre return to your land management cost is the highest that it can possibly be. So I hope that provides some brief context as to why we're getting to this panel, why we are doing this panel, and what we're hoping to bring to the table. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic down the row and have each of our panelists introduce themselves, because they will give a far better introduction of who they are, what their role in precision ag is, and how they got here than I will be able to.
I think everybody knows me.
Mine's not simple. I'm Travis Corn, Experience Ag Incorporated. Do precision ag consulting here in the local area from Johnson County, across the Rush, and then southeastern Indiana. So,
I'm Scott Russell. I'm actually from Bengal Equipment over 9 locations here in Indiana for the Precision Farming Department. Been with Baines for going on 7 years now. Grew up on a dairy farm where I was a subcontractor for Ag Leader Technologies, and then came here to Bengal.
I'm Justin Butler. I work for Bengal around the Lebanon location, precision farming specialist. Work directly under Scott and Stacy right here.
Stacy Stewart. I work for Bengal, just the same. I have a 3-store territory that I cover. Been basically involved in this since about 05, so got a little bit of knowledge, but probably forgot just as much too.
So if anybody has any questions to get started, I'm welcome to those, but also I have compiled a list of questions that my panelists have seen in case no one wants to be vocal right off the bat.
Can you tell she's studying to be a lawyer? She gave us a deposition ahead of time. What do they call that, discovery?
Yeah, it's true, it's true.
That's scary.
I'll tell you what, she's going to be powerful someday.
All right, well then I will get started and I'll ask, oh, you have a question? Go for it.
Yeah, I do have a question. The thing that bothers me about block analysis is how do you correlate the widths of all of your equipment so that if you have a 1 acre or a 2 acre block, that the data that you take from the center of that block then correlates to what you just recorded from it, and how do you handle the overlap between the various widths of the equipment?
You said
That's an hour discussion.
are you,
Repeat
make
the
sure I
question.
clarify what you're asking. Are you asking about when you try to break this down into a profit into a Pater program, or are you trying to break this down into just an analysis of how?
Well, okay, it would start with the analysis and then it would migrate into it. But I mean, let's say if you have a 40-foot wide planter, you have a 20-foot wide corn head, and you have a fertilizer spreader that spreads 60 feet, and you have a applicator that spreads 120 feet. At least, right here you got multiples. But if you're having mix and match and still, let's see, what is it? Now, if you take a 60-foot wide swath, then you've got, what, 7,000? No, 6,000 or 700. Because 60 by 700 gives you an acre.
Okay.
So then you're asking, how are you getting a clear view of what's actually represented underneath of that? Is
Right.
that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you take that?
So yeah, that's a great question, and the question was, because of all of the variance and swath widths that come into play when you're creating some kind of a trial, block design can potentially lead to no data, right? Because if I don't make my block big enough, then I don't ever get a clean combine pass of whatever treatment I'm aiming for. And so that's really, if you're going to do block analysis, you better think about the minimum size block, both in the across track and a long track that you need in order to develop a good data set. And it, probably the minimum block size that we're using generally, a long track, is about 600 feet. Because we want to be able to dump data off of either end of the block. And then the across track really, like all the things that you just mentioned, comes into play. Are you variable rate seeding? Okay, is that something we have to account for? You're applying potash is the variable that you're trying to change. What's the swath width of that? What's your combine pass? And how do all those play? And usually the answer is bigger than you want to go. Right? You've got to make your block bigger than probably the cooperator really wants to, but that's how you get reliable information.
Okay, but in that field example where you had all the various soil types.
And then can you fit that block into the environment that you're trying to really model? And that's another good point is what's the underlying cookie cutter that you're going to use to be able to say that is because again, go back to that where and how much, right? The where is the zone or the area, and the how much is hopefully the clean air, the reliable data that you get from what you're trying to apply. And there's software packages out there that'll do those kinds of calculations for you. There's software packages that allow you to put blocks where you use an AB line. It'll snap to a guidance line. So all of those things are how you overcome that. But size is usually the easiest to overcome those kinds of complications, I guess I'll call them, or interactions.
And as technology progresses, now you're down to row by row and nozzle by nozzle, right? So as our swath bits continue to get shallower, your yield data will catch up, and it will be in the very near future, right? Instead of being a 30-foot, 40-foot swath width, you will now have collected data that can represent a good representation what's down there. That's not very far out. So their job of setting these blocks up will get continually easier, and your information you're getting back will be a lot more representative. So.
And in the instance of the trials that we talked about there, for the enhanced learning blocks and the checks and whatnot, we put in and take into account the width of the equipment. So we're making sure that they are embedded in those blocks. I mean, the standard blocks that I kind of build out are 60 by 60. But when you're doing a trial and things like that, we are taking into account, okay, what are we working with in terms of the combine? What are we working with in terms of the planer pass? If we're doing, for nitrogen, we're making sure that we're putting that in, lining it up on an AB line. All of those things. So it is getting pretty advanced in terms of what we're putting together to make sure that those trials are giving us good data at the end.
And then adding to that, the placement of those blocks that you guys will notice is most of the time they're not at the beginning of a pass. You don't want speed variations affecting rate applied. There's still a mechanical limitation on spreaders, on hydraulic drives, even on electric drives. They still take just a second to come to rate, so you don't want that being filtered in. They'll be out there further in a pass, and so that stuff is accounted for in the background. Does that help kind of answer?
Yeah, well, that helped me to better understand because, as we were talking there, the complexity of the problem seems to be going straight up as opposed to kind of leveling off. And then the technology you're talking about what is the minimum economic threshold for the amount of acres you gotta have to do it?
You know, it's almost like
Wait,
that was one
that
of
was
my
like teed up, what
questions.
number was that on that thing, right? You're studying for that one, guys.
I was under discovery.
I'll take this a little bit, but I'll let you guys expound on this. It all depends on what you're looking to get back out of it. And that sounds like a cop-out,
Well,
right? It really does. Your return for your dollar might be different than the guy next to you. It depends on how many times you can use that technology on your operation. It's gonna depend on, the more acres you pass over, the quicker your return. That's just the bottom line of it. But it doesn't say that you have to have a minimum acres. It just may take you 2 years, it might take, somebody else a year. So, I'm gonna tee it off that and let you guys go.
Trouble is, at 2 years, things have changed 100% in 1 year now. And then we're all of a sudden, we're buying more technology. as
You need
per se.
another question?
What is it? How do you turn over?
It's like a
That's
fat
about-
man or something.
Did you guys get this pen out too?
Well, I think we've become more dependent on you, and the translation isn't between me and you, it's between you and me, or me and you, because you are providing me with this service, but if you can't do the right thing if I give you the wrong information. You ask the wrong question, what answer are you gonna get? Wrong. It happens every time.
Yeah, really on our end, when we're outfitting, I'll pick up product out here, when we're outfitting a planter with a V-set-V drive to go to that row-by-row variation, some guys want to use it as a row-by-row shutoff only. Some guys want to use it as they're gonna multi-hybrid across the planter and do different seeding rates for different. So that return on investment really is how much you want to use the technology that we're putting on the planter as well, or spray, whatever we're dealing with. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
I mean, there's guys 400 or 500 acres using this stuff. There's 30,000 acre guys using this stuff. I mean, so there's like you said, there's no right or wrong on who does and doesn't use it. I mean, there's no, like you said, clear cut of this is where the bottom is. Can't nobody below this use it.
Well, I mean, the turnover.
You were kind of saying it's gonna turn over in 1 year, right? And now we have to buy all new stuff.
Yeah.
Right, we're gonna come back and sell you another fancy.
Hopefully.
thing, right?
That's what we're here.
I think that all depends on the right partner, who you choose on that, and these guys probably echo something I think most of us have been in the industry any amount of time that plan on staying, realize that your name and your reputation's out there and you don't want we can't exist like that. I know from my space, I target 7 to 10 years of trying to get a guy forward. Now I don't know what's coming next year. So he may want what's coming next year and I can't. They don't give me that. I wish they did, but they don't give me that. But I'd say 7 to 10 years is trying to have a payback on your operation and say, I'm gonna run this steering system, for this long. You're gonna get a return on your investment in 7 to 10 years, guaranteed out of technology. Majority of the technology out there probably pays for itself within 2. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I would say on most of this stuff, unless you just really go hog wild with it, I really like to see that 1 to 2 year kind of return on investment. Some of these, I'm gonna call them minor stuff, like I just put a set of feed sweeps on a planter. Looking at, I wanna see a 1 year, but,
How many inside autopilots do you guys have running?
More than you shake stick.
When did they stop making inside autopilots?
Like Insights quit
09?
coming out. Yeah.
09?
10 is one somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, 2009, so
Yeah.
we still have we still have technology running from 2009 that still does a good job and accomplishes that grower's task. So just because something new is out doesn't mean you gotta replace it.
Well, I mean,
And I'll pick on the V-set-V drive just like that. I mean, that's been out for, oh my goodness.
2011.
So,
Talking to the mic, you would.
yeah.
I hear him just fine, Dan.
Stuff like the V-set-V drive, I'll pick on it again, it's been out for a decade now, and it's still considered cutting edge technology with what it's doing. There's nothing, I guess, sure drive with Agvator, you could do that, but, we haven't changed what that's doing in the past 10 years. It's still current technology.
I mean, to echo what Travis was saying, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you know, when I'm talking to an individual, you know, we're trying to look and see what the guy might be wanting in the next couple of years, what, you know, technologies he's looking for, or what might benefit in the next, you know, 4 or 5 years even. I mean, it just, everybody's a little different, you know, some guys want a unit that you can take and start out in the tractor and the planter, they can move to the combine, move to the sprayer, move to the anhydrous rig or whatever, you know, so it just, I hate to, you know, like you said, cop out on it, but it's kind of one of those, it all depends on, you know, the individual and the territory they're in, so.
All right, does anybody else have any questions, or you want me to pick one off the list? Okay.
Your turn, yeah.
I'm picking off the list. All right. So I'm going to ask each of you a little bit of an open-ended question that you can kind of take it however you see fit. What do you see being the most important component of precision agriculture in the next 5 years? Hey, it was on the discovery. It was on the discovery.
You ought to have an answer. I wanted to go first though, because I didn't want anybody else.
Most important component. I'm gonna say it's gonna be, I mean, a little bit of the technology itself, but I'm gonna say it's you guys, because you guys are the ones driving what we, I'm gonna say, come up with, you know, invent, for lack of better words, kind of stuff, you know. So to me, it's the farmer telling me what he wants to do, what he wants to see, how he wants to improve his operation. It's the most important thing to me, so.
I think for mine, it'd be connected services and how we all as an ecosystem are, you know, getting that data from one place to another, from machine to agronomist to your guys' on maps and all that stuff.
Yeah, coming from my end, where I do pretty much all the data management for the complex, it's kind of going back to the basics almost. You're talking year-old or your yield data, all the way to planting data. We're using this technology to do a better job, but it's also providing a lot of feedback that we may or may not be using. So really taking that data from current technology you have and what we're outfitting it and being able to make better decisions for the next following year.
I was going to say the data, where it goes from there, and the usability of it. I think that's just continuing to change. But also, I think that using the data that you know, these block trials or on the newer technologies with, you know, these sprayers, these spray drones, different things like that, to be able to break that down, see in spray technology, you're going to see autonomy, entering the markets a little more. So from the hardware side, you're going to start seeing some things like that. Everybody's just flirting with that right now, but I think your drone spraying is going to be the next big thing. I think that you're going to see that's going to be an eye opener.
So they've said them all. But no, really, I think it comes back to the people that are really leveraging the technology for what it's worth. It's autonomy, it's organized data, it's having the ability to do it through a connected service, and I forgot.
Just basically these guys in Jeff.
Exactly. So there you go. So it's all been said, but guess who's got to make the biggest growth curve?
Acceptance.
You guys. That's the million, 10 million, 100 million, billion question is, can the people in the room find the right support, connection, tools to get what they want to get done? And autonomy, I agree 100% autonomy, and sensors, which makes you guys decision makers on data. And if you're not good at that, you probably...
And who's going to use your data?
Who's going to use your data?
That's
Honestly, that's, and who you're going to allow to use.
Exactly.
Allow to use it. There has been for a long time, and you've been at the center of this. You guys that house data, clean data, there's great value with that. And tapping into that resource, I think, is probably being one.
Yeah.
One of the things that is very obvious is that there's many gigabytes of data sitting out there, and how do we as producers and you as people helping us sort through that data and make it usable to us?
So the thing I kind of want to echo from what he said, as well as to make a point of, in the past, I'm gonna say definitely 2 years, or maybe 3, I went from working, I'm gonna say 95% of my time with you as the grower, to part of my job now, almost half the time is to working with people, such as consultants, agronomists. We've seen this shift where we used to call partners, we used to partner with you. And we're still a partner with all of you, but it's more of a team effort now, whereas we're not only working with you, we're working with your agronomists, we're working with your crop insurance salesman. And to put that load all on you, to say that, you have to decipher through all your data, and some people do that, and that's fine if they can weasel through it. But it's also not my spot to say that you're planting the wrong variety, you're not doing that. Everybody needs to do this as a team, so I would really say for us to be able to partner with you and your team on who's making or helping you make those decisions at a consulting level is really the key to that.
Okay.
I'll really echo that too. I mean, I feel like as we've gotten started with this pay dirt program, I've met and connected with a lot of other people, and I think that the team approach is becoming more and more prevalent, I guess is the right word for it. Yeah, it takes a team of support. So, and off of that question, I'm gonna pick on Jim because I know Jim has a good question that kind of talks about tech and support and merging multiple systems together.
Yeah, I've got Ag Leader, Raven, and now Pro 700. I would love to use FieldView, but FieldView didn't like Ag Leader.
He's looking at you for some reason.
He's really pointing at you. So when you use multiple monitors, is all this going to be able to merge to one program without a lot of steps?
We have an answer for that.
Okay.
So I was talking to you about your My Case IH.
Your My Case IH is colorblind, so we take it out of any color machine, and it'll come out. We can take it out of the sprayers, we can take it out of Ag Leader, we can take it out of deer stuff, we can take it out of K stuff, whatever you have, Challenger, everything. And that's so My Case IH, and put it all in one spot and give access for the agronomy side, so they have access to it. And they can do all the same stuff as FieldView. So that's our big push.
Yeah, I'll echo that if we're going to do a plug here for one of our services. Yeah, it's been a great tool for us to use to not only connect the grower with everything. It's a manual to it. There's some, taking USB sticks in. We can't just wirelessly push everything. It's becoming more and more. But we've been able to connect with a lot of agronomists on this where, again, it goes to that teamwork approach. It's making everybody's life easier, including your guys mostly. Just trying to make everything more efficient.
I think one side to look at that though is, and back to your question too, is we have this gigabytes of data. There's a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, I think IBM purchased Farm Mobile last year, and it was for probably $1 billion. I don't know, but their whole data set was trashed because it was just they couldn't use it, right? So there's a lot of money trying to use something. They're going to figure out a way, and they can't use it because it's garbage. So if you guys don't do your job and help us show you how to put the varieties in, and you put it in wrong, you don't have an idea. That basically makes that worth nothing. You have to do a good job of at least coming in and post-correcting or making sure it gets done, because if you don't calibrate your yield monitors, a lot of you guys, are like, oh man, it's relative. It's all the same. If it's off by 5%, it's not all 5% across the board.
Nope.
The way yield monitors work, it doesn't matter which brand it is. You guys will probably echo this. The Precision 2020, with a single point calibration thing, yeah, it's nice, it's quick. You true up, they don't calibrate, they true up, right? That's one of their big selling things, but they true up. So all they're doing is putting a linear curve on a graph, right? You may be dead on at this flow range, but you're not going to be at this one. The Ag Leader, the more common ones that guys were used to for a long time, you do 5 flow ranges and you have a non-linear curve you're creating. It's a more accurate data set across all flow ranges. That's why you got to do those. Most guys hate that time. Most guys are going to hate running that calibration. and they say, oh, the other ones are just as accurate. This guy's probably seen more data in the background than anybody, and you can, I've not talked to him prior to this, so I'm teaming up for possibly an insult in my face. But some of the cleanest data that you will find, right, is a problem. You have to calibrate properly. You can't do that. I mean, it's just so, clean data is important, right? Just because we have it coming from a Raven, all these other things, that doesn't mean it's good data, right? You gotta make sure that you're silent, you know. But then everybody is striving to be that one central data hub. From Google to whoever, right? Everybody wants to be in the space you guys are in charge of right now. You're in charge of all your own data. Every manufacturer, every player, big player wants to be in charge of that. They want access to that because they now control everything from supply all the way through demand. Right? They know how much inventory is out there. They know exactly where it's placed. They know all kinds of stuff with that data. Can you build on that a little, John?
You hit the nail on the head. Calibration is key, and the other thing I would say is products. If you are going to do true monitor management of data from a monitor without having some translation, you have to be clean about putting in spray application products, dry application products, you name it. That information has got to go into that monitor accurately. Otherwise, somebody on the opposite end has to.
A coverage map will spray that. A coverage map doesn't do anything anybody good.
And it's got to be consistent. If you put it in as like the grower, you know, in your sprayer, in your grower, you know, farm and field, you know, if you called the field back 40 with those spaces in the sprayer, but then harvest time you come and go, it's the back 40 with 2 spaces, you know, like you said, I mean, it just makes it so difficult to try to clean it up and so, you know, it's not just important in the one, I mean, it's important across the whole operation that it's consistent and just as well as accurate, so.
All right, I'm gonna pick on David a little bit again because I'm just picking on people because he brought up a really good point earlier, and that is if you're, you know, you're trying to do all the right things, you're calibrating, but you keep getting things that are a little bit off. How do you make sure that that doesn't happen? What to you guys is a proper calibration? What are the steps that someone needs to be taking just generally?
How much time do you have?
You know what I say, I mean.
That's a long question.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question too.
What do we expect,
Yep.
what do we expect
We're
on
talking
our
about
calibration?
yield
Yeah.
monitor?
Yes,
yield?
yes. If we're on yield monitors, what are, you know, the key takeaways on calibration?
So you want to start with it?
Mine would be, it's not a, first of all, I may get some flack on this, but grain car scales are not calibration scales, for one. That's a big one for me. Another one is making sure that we're catching the variability, because I'm pretty sure that somebody in here has a field that doesn't perform quite as the same as the one next to it, or even within the same field. So making sure that we're calibrating fast, medium, slow, catching all those different speeds, because when the rain's coming, that hydro seems to creep forward a little bit. So those would be my 2 big ones.
I want to put down like some expectations on yield monitors. Every manufacturer has a different spec. It doesn't matter if it's on a flow meter of a sprayer, or it doesn't matter if it goes to a flow sensor of a combine. There's a selling percentage in which they're expected to be accurate within. So if you're falling within that range, and each manufacturer is different, so you guys can, you know, kind of single us out at the end or something like that, then look at that. I can speak, you know, by good knowledge on the aggregate product line. They sell anything under 4%, it's called good. We see many times that we're under 1.5% accurate on a yield monitor. And these guys are obviously nodding their head that they see the same thing, right? So I don't accept 4%, you know, but if you do it correctly, you can get 1.5% to 1% on a crop. Now you may have some variability, you know, from field to field a little bit. A lot of times, I've been doing a big push where the weight, crop weight, 60 pounds, 50 pounds, that affects us huge, right? If we could put that in there as a known on hybrid, it would change our calibration greatly. right? So there's still some things that they're probably working on in the background to help this out. But on that product line, I can speak, you shouldn't be expecting anything 2% above. I would say no, you're out. You should have better, higher standards than that. They've been around for a very long time. The single point calibration systems are, I think Precision's, their true up, I think that's an 8%. A standard Raven flow meter, an RFM60 flow meter off the shelf, that's a 20% accuracy. I don't know if anybody ever knows that, but that's by the book, that can be 20% off. And there's nothing wrong with it. And we obviously see a lot more accuracy out of them than that. But, so understanding what this stuff is, and then going to the preventative maintenance steps correctly to ensure you have the best accuracy possible. You know, elevator chain tension, sprocket wear, are you placing your impact plates? I got guys that they run through crawdad mounts, and they have to clean their flow sensors on how many times because it plugs the mud, right? So just knowing the conditions, knowing the fields, knowing what's going on helps a lot.
I mean, doing simple catch tests on your, if you're doing, you know, like you was talking about calibration, I mean, doing a catch test on the 28 bar or on the sprayer or something, just to make sure it's as accurate as it can be. I mean, there's
Daytime.
I hate to say, what's
Daytime running to nighttime.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's what I'm saying. First of the year, first at the end of the year, kind of, you know. I mean, guys will take a combine and do yield calibrations first of the season with high moisture corn. Well, by the end of the season, you're low. So, you know, I won't say that we always do it, but I try to get guys, if they know they're going to start really early, do one tread, and then, you know, midway through the season, do it again, kind of thing. So, you know, and if there's any ever questions, I mean, we're all here for you guys to, you know, and as much as I hate to say it, the book's there too, you know. Some guys forget where the book's at, but most of the stuff is all there, you know. I mean, so there's, I mean, it doesn't matter what flavor it is, it's there. So
I think a lot of times yield monitors get blamed for crop loss as well. I see it happen where the air densities change. You can be running all day and the thing be great, and then at nighttime, the guy's running the same fan speed, same settings, same sieves, everything like that. And he's like, well, there's no way that this is 10 bushel less corn. Well, no, probably not. You're probably blowing it out the back end. They never change anything on any of their settings, and that does affect everything that happens in that machine. So I got some guys that have nighttime running, they have daytime running settings that they set things at. That is not very common. A lot of guys think you set it and you kind of go. They don't want to get out of the seat, and so that it greatly affects it. So.
Well, one of the things that I have seen over the years is that too many times they were presented with a set and go and not encouraged to make anything else because that was
if you're sold a combine,
yeah,
simple is good, right?
That's right.
So who's going to come out and tell you that you got to set this if the sun's up and the sun's down?
Therein lies the issue.
So, you're right.
My brother worked in service, and he said the biggest problem was trying to make the machine do what the salesman said it'd do. And these guys right here know exactly what I'm talking about.
The biggest insult you could probably call any of us is a salesman.
Well, I understand that too.
I mean, honestly, that's probably the biggest insult you call any of us. I don't know these guys.
Piled higher and deeper, so it usually is.
All right, so now that we've got everyone down in the dumps, I'm going to ask each of you to share a success story that you've had of using precision agriculture on an operation.
Go, boss, go.
Success story.
Well, I mean,
I would say one of my biggest success stories was, I mean, obviously I work for a Case IH, so sorry to all the green hands out there. But, you know, being able to go one of those farms that we're all one color, maybe it's Colossus, maybe it's John Deere, whatever it is, and but they like one product line from the red side. So, you know, they like the combine, they like the planter, but they like everything else to be the other color. Being able to be there to help them navigate that water of what we were talking about earlier with different data types from different monitors, making all that work. So, yeah, I had a grower that dived in with 2 red combines and everything else on that farm was green. So 2 green planters, sprayer, everything. So he was definitely afraid that, you know, his data that he'd been taking from his planters and putting in his green combine and been working for years wasn't going to work anymore. So knowing the challenges ahead of time with what we were going to have and being able to be there helping is really our greatest success. And now he's got a little bit more red equipment on that farm because of it. But really, for me, any success story is being able to not just sell you guys a product, but to actually help you guys and then see you guys succeed is really where, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I like seeing everybody succeed.
You can send it down.
I haven't been working in the ag world too long, but I did get to speak to a grower up north and big success story with, you know, getting him all set up with in his combine, and he was telling us how he literally chopped his man hours in half and everything for in harvest. He did it in half the time, and he got to get all the data he wanted and then make better decisions this year because of all that. And he said if it wasn't for all the precision stuff he had invested into the years before, you know, he wouldn't foresee that being a thing. So I think once I got in here and I got to hear that, I knew that like this is a field that I want to work in to help you guys, you know, achieve better goals each year. So.
One of the customers I got down south by the Ohio River, I mean, when we first started dealing with him, like I say, don't want to say anything bad here, but he had a lot of older equipment and stuff. And once we were able to start putting some technology on these things, and he started seeing the benefits, he started upgrading some of his equipment. He upgraded his planter to an ISO planter. He upgraded his sprayer, you know, so he could use section control on it. And he upgraded, you know, the combine the next year to be able to have auto guidance on it. You know, I mean, just different things. It's kind of one of those. It's like these guys, you know, as the years go by, it's good to see, you know, I mean, once everybody gets a taste of it, you know, they like the information they're getting out of it, they like the man-hour cut, you know, they feel like they're making better progress every day, so it's just one of those, I don't know how to put it, watching you guys have a little better life, you know, kind of like we're trying to do, you know, I mean, just trying to make things easy for everybody, you know, so.
Before I take yours. Actually, I was gonna give one for you. I sat over there by Wayne and Mike, and they said that they used Travis. I said, well, what kind of service does Travis get? And he says, when I call him, when I call the people that work for you, I get help. And that's a win for you, whether you know it or not. Those 2 guys gave you a feather in the cap of you take care of them. Well, mine is, I see the same customers year after year. There's people that are coming back and getting help on the data side year after year after year. And I mean, Mike and I probably been working together, I bet you we started in 05 or 06, doing field trials, and it's little things. I left a strip of untreated fungicide, pull it out for me and break it out by zone, tell me is there a difference. But there's a group, that favorite field that I showed you today, we've been doing seeding prescriptions for those guys for I don't know how long. And we've been telling them, you're planting too many beans. And we put the blocks in, and we've shown it to JD 2 or 3 years in a row now that, you know, 100,000 beans is doing just as good as 160. Yeah. And this year, he said we're lowering our bean population rates. He finally seen enough that he's ready to manage across the operation to a lower bean population. And that, to me, 55 cents a thousand, you lower it to 30,000 beans, you can make pretty decent money at that kind of opportunity. And that's, to me, that tells me that JD has come along to the point now where not only does he understand the data, but he trusts it.
I think mine comes in after the technology has been on. It's harvesting that data. I've really started to understand and like that and just help them generate questions. I might not be able to provide the answers, but getting their mindset to ask why and generate a question, right? And do some data. That's where I think the biggest, and then there's multiple, you could single out one guy and stuff like that, but we did some 30-inch trial beans on several growers this last year, just locally here. And they were cutting their populations back, and I think their optimum population honestly was 100,000. Yeah. We went down to 80. We went down to 80 on 30-inch rows, and he said they were like cutting trees. And he was complaining because they had to replace the sickle. I said, well, it's going to be in the cost of operations. You got to figure that in. But just thinking outside the box, and guys kind of looking to you and asking you questions about some ideas on, well, what do you think about this, and being involved in those conversations just turns into friendships. I think everybody probably says that it turns into more of a personal friendship than a business consulting type role. So.
Do you guys have any questions before I jump to another one on my list?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Sorry. I know that corn and soybeans are big, that's what we're here for, but how can I make precision ag pay in forage crops? How can I justify the costs on my acres for corn and soybean here? How can I justify the cost for corn and soybean but try and make it work and pay on making hay?
I didn't study for that one. No, I'll do a little bit, I guess, on this. It all depends on the number of acres you're probably going to do. Your man hours, I don't know if you run any kind of steering systems or anything like that. Your efficiencies, we do a lot of chopping, a lot of silage, a lot of haylage, stuff like that. We've got a lot of auto steer systems that go onto that. I would say, I don't think there's not a tonnage basis like flow sensor out there. I mean, even if you do a Oxbow's got their, I don't think there's really anything with that. Can't really take off a production of what we're doing on mapping yet. Just not a large enough market for the manufacturers to put engineering into. But I would say you're probably going to start with some kind of steering, and you're going to have if it's not just you being an operator, if you're going to have some other operators that are just maybe longer hours in a day, maybe the ability to just do it more efficiently, a few less passes in a field, easier to collect. I'm going to call it harvest per se, right? But yeah, it's hard to pencil out. I think everybody would agree auto steer is very hard to pencil, but once you have it in there, they want to keep it about like air conditioning. They call you if it's not working, and I'll wait on you. Like, you guys can't put your arms up there, so you got to do it down the road still. But yeah, so.
Best thing I ever heard is you don't watch TV without the remote, right?
Yeah, right.
You don't drive your tractor without the.
Yeah. So I don't know. You guys got any ideas going down through there?
I'd say for me, I came from the dairy world, so I still carry quite a few customers in the dairy industry up in northern Indiana. One thing that I've seen a shift going away maybe from the auto steer is on the application side. So I've seen a lot of co-ops going to ISO bars where they're not necessarily giving you the monitor, but they're putting a Raven ISO node or an Ag Leader ISO node on either a pull type sprayer, spreader, whatever it is, where we've been doing a lot more recommendations or helping people with prescriptions on those hay acres, or there's a lot of mint up in my area, so kind of the same thing where they're chopping it. But we've seen a big shift in the co-ops going to application control on the bars, and they're investing some money in their own equipment to kind of coincide with yours.
Anyone else have anything? Good question, but
Any other
challenging area.
That's where I can cut my biggest man hours. I think everybody here could say that they have, I should say this, have corn and soybeans down pretty good. But how do I cut my man hours making hay?
I think that you're going to see autonomy, replication, simulate one being the leader and the other being a follower. Those scenarios being played out further in those specialty crop areas. That's where you're going to probably pick up more in the future.
Any other questions? for the panel, what is the most common missing piece that you guys encounter in collecting quality data?
First and last time.
I'll say it, it's consistency.
Yeah.
To me, that's the biggest thing is, like I say, we said it before, is consistency in the data. I mean, if it's not consistent across the whole operation, then it's kind of almost pointless, you know? I mean, just, these guys, I mean, I know they can get through it, they can figure it out, they can call you guys, talk to you, hey, did you mean this, did you mean that? I mean, something as simple as spelling it, you know, correctly makes a world of difference, you know, so. That, to me, that's the biggest thing, is consistency.
Yeah, I know Stacy knows a few people out there. I don't really know anybody here, so I can't speak to anybody, but, you know, it's a two-way street with us helping you. Is you also need to be able to work with us and put in the effort to making those, we've hit on it before, making the products available. We can't create data that's not there. So when we get a map that just says corn as your product for the whole operation, that doesn't really, you know, you're upset, it upsets us because you're upset with the product that we're trying to support you. So, and a lot of that goes back, I think, on us too, making sure that everybody's educated the same way, being able to use it. So, to me, there still may be some learning curves on both parts that I think everybody needs to do.
Sorry, I gotta call the guy, just let this go.
I think he left his coat. The guy got up and walked out, left his coat.
I'll answer while Travis makes his life better.
You know what I think it is? Motivation.
Motivation.
I think it's motivation. Why don't people calibrate their yield monitors?
Because the rain's coming, let's go.
Because of the pain.
What else?
Well, I think there's
Those are all reasons that are related to getting more done. What's another reason that you haven't calibrated?
a lack of uniformity in the equipment interlocking.
Yeah, there's some of that.
So where do you get the standard? Because you just said that a grain cart scale is not accurate enough to.
Okay. What are you guys doing with your yield monitor data?
Yeah, that's.
What are you doing with it?
Goes in a file and sits there for 10 years.
Yeah, so why the hell bother calibrating it?
Right.
I don't like to be lied to.
If it's right, I can post it on Twitter and brag.
There you go.
That's honesty right there.
So I think it's motivation. I think it's motivation from the perspective of.
I'm not calling anyone out because I do too.
But to go back to your idea of interlocking and one size, and it's there is differences amongst the systems. So you have multiple colors. You have to understand each of them. But there are. I mean, when you go to college, a lot of times they don't teach you specifics about how to do a job. What they teach you is conceptual. And that's really what, if you can understand concepts, you can go from one color to the next.
Okay.
Because they're all conceptually the same. But it's different button presses on the screen to get to the same concept. And to me, that's somebody that's effective. I'm sure you guys all do it because you have to touch all the monitors. And you know that there's a flow, when you're dealing in a liquid system, there is a flow, a cal number that belongs to the pulses that, as that impeller spins, there's a certain pulses per gallon that's kicking out, or pulses per liter. You know, that's another dang thing that a lot of those engineers love to do. But the concepts are the same. You understand the concepts. Going back to the whole motivation thing though, is if you don't have a reason to use your yield data, close is close. If all it is a coffee shop bragging point, and all I'm really looking at is at the end of the year that the monitor tells me I got so many 100,000 pounds, and the scale tells me I got so many 100,000 pounds, I'm happy as pig and poop.
That's even going further than some.
Yeah.
You know, that's even going further than some. If you're not actively taking the data in these days and trying to make management decisions based off of it, you're just wasting your time in collecting the data. And I'm not saying there's not other return aspects that can't be gained, you know, seed cost savings, different things like that, right? And sometimes during that process you save, or you're still collecting the data. But yeah, you should be taking it beyond at this point.
Even if you're not gonna use the data yourself, I mean, you can, if you're not gonna use it yourself, I mean, give it to your agronomist, give it to the co-op, I mean, because most guys like to do the variable rate spreading, or, you know, some sort of variable rate spraying, or whatever, you know, so even if you don't think it's useful to you, I mean, collect it. I mean, I had a guy for years up around the Elwood area that wouldn't simply just put a USB stick into his monitor. Said, I don't need it. So, you know, I asked that question to him. I said, does it call a variable rate? And he goes, well, yeah. I said, well, don't you think it'd be a great thing for them to have, you know, to know where to put it, you know? So even though, you know, these guys are right. I mean, it's great for information for you guys to use, but even if you don't want it, give it to the other guys. I mean, because it's just going to only benefit you in the long run, so.
I think it goes back to a little bit what I said earlier with teamwork aspect of really honesty out the gate with people. They'll tell me that they want the data, they want to be able to use it, but they want nothing to do with processing it. So they'll work with me to help make sure they collect good data, but once it's collected, they want to be told what it means and what it's going to do for them, and that's fine. But again, it goes back to that whole teamwork of we got to make sure we're all on the same page, because if I think that you're going to use your data the way you're going to use it, and then you don't, nobody wins in that. So, but if you're honest out the gate and tell me, I'm going to collect it, you figure out what to do with it later, and then we can all work together.
Going back to different inputs and different brands, just make sure when you're talking to your precision farm specialist, and one thing I like to do is I like to build for the whole farm in the future. So if we're going to go down one path, I got a product line that does this, this, and this, but I have this one over here that can do more, and we're going to use a lot of the same data inputs to get the data out as well, and it's consistent over the entire farm, sprayer, you know, planter, and yield data as well. So you need to think about that when you do the initial investment, and make sure it's something you're going to get to learn and love and be able to use year round. Like these guys said, get the return on investment year round and not just spring or fall.
Don't kid yourself though. It takes a special person to sit down behind a computer program and try to analyze this stuff and look at these maps and make sense of them. You're better off partnering with someone to do that a lot of times. Those programs, even when you use them every day, if you step away from them, you can't flow through them. You have to know the programs to be able to effectively get through them. So sometimes finding that person to help you, and that, you know, that's worth all of its weight in gold. I mean, you can't. Don't kid yourself. If you're not good at it, you're just going to get frustrated, and it's pointless. Don't spend the money on the programs. Don't, you know, they're expensive. They're not cheap to run. So.
Thanks for the plug, Travis. So with that being said, is there any last remaining questions from the group? Last call. Okay, then I will ask each of our panelists, if you would, just give one takeaway that you want the group to hear about precision ag from today.
From today?
Just in general. We don't even have to do today. We'll do in general.
One takeaway for me, and just don't be afraid to ask us. Don't be afraid to call and ask the questions. You know, there is no question that is too dumb, too stupid, you know, I mean, we all had to learn. I mean, so you guys are learning multiple things, learning new things all the time, you know, as the technology comes out. So for me, that's it. Just don't be afraid to ask any questions.
For me, what I really want you guys to take away from this is the old days of where precision people such as us, where we sell you a guy consistent, we say, hope you enjoy it, see you later. Obviously, we're there to help you with all that stuff, but the main takeaway I want you to do here is that it doesn't end between you and I. It ends with when we get involved with people like this, you know, any agronomist, any seed salesman, when we're all working together on it. So the days of where your equipment provider is just giving you the equipment is, in my opinion, over, because there's too much stuff going on that we need to involve too many people with, and it's the right thing to do for everybody.
I echo his, teamwork thing. But also figure out a roadmap of where you want to go. That's so helpful in us in trying to achieve what you want. I think a simple roadmap of saying, well, I may want to do this, that's fine, that's great. If you don't do it ever, at least we had you prepared. But the worst thing we can do is have you say, oh, well, I forgot to ask this question, during the interview process or during the sit down that we have with you. But yeah, figure out a roadmap and try to shoot a little further out on your goals so we can help you get there. And then, your input, I always say, it's been out there for years, garbage in, garbage out. So if you want to use the data on the backside, you got to make sure you put the work on the front.
You getting the last word?
Like Stacy said, don't be afraid to call us. It's our job. Doesn't matter color of the machine or what you have. We're here to answer your questions and point you in the right direction. And if we don't know the answer, we'll go find the answer for you to help you guys achieve your goals. We do it every day. It's my job to do quotes and help get your data to the right person so it can get formatted and all this stuff. So I might not know the answer for everything right off the bat, but I know who to go ask. And that's important. We want to make sure you guys are successful, because if you're not successful, then we're not going to be successful either.
Last bow tie on it.
So I was sitting here trying to think about what's created the most success for the group that I work with, the Amplify Network, the group of consultants that I work for. And it's peer-to-peer learning, hands down for sure, 100%. And that is, what that means is, if you find the right people that can create a network of like people like yourself, to put in the right scenario, to ask the right questions and collect the right data to answer the right questions, there's opportunity like you can't believe. And it's trust. It comes back to trust. And you guys are right. There has to be teamwork amongst that network and amongst the people that are providing you service on the technology. Because you probably are never going to find it all in one location. You're never all going to find the people that can support the hardware, the people that can support the data, the people that can transfer the data. They just don't exist. So there's going to have to be some set of experts that you rely on. But bringing that back to a group of farmers with like mind, with the right guidance, and that's really what, if we're plugging things, that's what we're trying to build at Amplify. That's what we're trying to build amongst the network. The consultants are already good at sharing data. We're building it out so that the farmers can also share data through the consultants within the network and going a step further. So peer-to-peer learning, get to a situation where you can learn from other people that are in your same scenario.
Thanks,
All
Brian.
right. Well, let's thank our panelists. Thank you so much, guys. So my last little remark that I want to kind of leave everyone with is that we have talked pretty heavily within Green Crop this last couple weeks about setting up a few trials for this year. So if you have any interest in getting in on either a nitrogen trial and or a population trial that we would partially run through the pay dirt program, please get in contact with us. We would love to work with you guys. You're more than welcome to come visit with us after the fact, but thank you all for coming. Please, if you also have feedback on what you would like to see more from a panel like this next year, please let me know. Thank you all so much for coming. Do you have anything, Danny?
Yeah. Any chance that we could have a calibration clinic later in this year?
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll leave that open, but anyway.
Okay. We have one more little giveaway.
Golden any day.
Is this for the leftover Chick-fil-A?
No. John Mary.
That's what.
Thank you all again for coming.